All right, good morning. Welcome to the Howler Mouse channel. It is technically Christmas Eve. We are at 12/24, 2023 for you people in the future. 6:57 a.m. to be exact. And did a live stream last night trying to show a comic book haul, and things didn't go so well towards the end. StreamYard here blacked out for about a minute and a half to the point where I got back on my phone and finished it on the phone, showing the comic book haul, and it was the newer stuff. But in the midst of that, while I was doing the live show, at the beginning of it, giving people time to check in because I'm so sporadic here. Make sure you've liked the videos, subscribe, hit that bell so you know when I do these things. But anyway, I spent a lot of time kind of like laughing and giggling and just not being very serious about things that have happened on the comic book community online, the drama, whatever it is, and things like that. So my legendary insomnia hit last night. I've actually been up since 3 in the morning. The app on my phone that I put on there to start tracking it, I'm averaging 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. So sometimes when you do these things, you're so comfortable doing YouTube sometimes and stuff, you forget that maybe sometimes you need to stop. You need to collect yourself, get your thoughts together. Um, stop acting light of things and going through and uh, you know, sometimes you need to like slow down, collect those thoughts and get them out. So yeah, I've been watching classic Star Wars on television. I have Star Wars, classic Star Trek on television. Talked to the wife before she went to bed, made a cup of coffee, and I'm like, you have some thoughts, so let's get them out. Full disclosure, if you see the title of this video, it says Cancel Pigs, Comic Book Palace, Comicsgate, and is it 2017 again? If you are watching in the future, I will do a brief synopsis of what is going on to make me want to talk about these things, okay? Because, of course, I have a YouTube channel. And when you have a YouTube channel, you just have to give your opinion on things. It's just mandatory, and everybody's going to take you serious, and everybody's going to jump on there. And granted, there are some people who take this a lot more serious than I do. There was a time not that long ago where a lot of this stuff felt very life and death for me. And my whole point is when I talk about these things, some of this stuff it has been going on for so long we're now in reruns, okay, and that's my point. I can't believe it's gone on this long despite losing a ton of people and finding a whole new audience, and there's a whole new audience that they think this is how it's always been. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's kind of blown my mind, kind of a history lesson, kind of more of observations and stuff, right? So to go ahead and give you like full transparency with me and stuff, with admitting how this stuff used to really kind of get to me, and I've done videos of like the current state of comics has broke my heart, and the comic book community that used to be is gone, and all this stuff like that. I'm out of my mourning period, is what it comes to, and it was a well-deserved mourning period because what was here was very special. For a lot of comic book collectors of all ages, seasons to the new, the guiding the young kids on there, because there are thousands and thousands, I would dare say hundreds of thousands of comic books that have come out in the last, oh my God, we're creeping up on 100 years, people, for real, but we'll go 80 years and stuff, right? And you just have, and this is an epiphany. This has been a problem with readers. I remember Carl Sagan saying this on Cosmos when I was a kid, as he was in a library, right? But basically, you have just so much time in your life, and so much time in that life allotted to reading and capturing moments, to where you'll never read everything that's out there, no matter how hard you try, how much you love it and stuff. So it's about what you're going to read and the quality of what you're going to read and the things that connect with you and just entertainment. That's up to you. Are you not into deep reading? Are you into just entertainment? Are you into funny animals, cosmic stories, film noir, slice of life, indie, black and white, Conan's, fantasy? It's so much genre, such a rich, oh, this is just a rich medium of things that you can find. It's there if you want it. So I'm a big guy into I'm really big into experimenting. A great collection has variety and trying new things because we're always going to find out that something's going to interest us. And then again, as we age and get older and our taste refine or regress, or it's a roller coaster ride, people. You really need, you will find things that you didn't know were there, that you were like, this is great, right? Case in point, Battling Boy. I'm already getting into that, and it's really cool. No big deal. I've always been to Johnny Quest and things like that. But as I look around here and I can grab something randomly, there'd be something here I never thought I would like if I was going to read it, right? And one thing, this is signed by Garth Ennis, I do believe. But anyway, war comics, something that I touched on when I was a kid because the stepdad and the uncle were both military. I was military for a while, and so they had war comics. It was Unknown Soldier, Sergeant Rock. Never really my cup of tea. Now I'm kind of like seeing what's going on with them. I'm like, there's some good stuff in there. But the full transparency now is from somebody who has been doing YouTube like going on 13 years. And yes, you can look at the views if that's important to you, but go back into the 2000 teens. The channel was much bigger then. But and I put the time in and I put the thought in and things like that. But what caused me to kind of lose interest in this is, for full transparency, is a lot of what's been going on since 2015. And just to let you know, Comicsgate did not really start until 2017 for you young guys. And the full transparency that I keep meaning to get to is the fact, like, now, I may not be 100% accurate what's been going on the last couple months, if not even the last year, possibly more. Why? Because what has happened is I want you to imagine going to the grocery store, okay, and you end up with a cart full of your groceries, and maybe you're not on your phone while you're standing in the long lines and the coupon lady is in front of you and all this stuff like that. So you're there for a minute and you're scanning around looking like, can I get into a shorter line? Is there anywhere else to go? Anything to do here? And you're stuck. And then it happens. You might look over to your left and they have a rack of magazines, and it starts with the National Enquirer, if they even make that anymore. It starts with the National Enquirer. And funnily enough, that is the epitome of great reporting there, of gossip and trash and things like, speculation, out and out lies at times and stuff, right? And it goes down from there to the other publications and stuff like that, right? So when you're kind of stuck in line or you have things going on or something like that, we all have that piece of us that's ready for a little sleaze sometimes, a little gossip, a little, if you will, right? And I like to, every now and then, I admit, I don't watch Honey Boo Boo. I luckily missed all of that. I missed all the Kardashian stuff, which blows my mind. The trash TV and everything like that. Pretty much anything that's on TLC, apparently, right? I miss the Sister Wives and stuff, right? But you get what I'm saying, the lowbrow tone of things that's going on and everything like that. And that's what it's kind of turned into in my mind, right? But you'll catch yourself going down the rabbit hole and stuff. And with the rabbit hole with me will be, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of X, not Twitter. Good morning, John C. The good, a little few minutes of X, maybe check out a few videos, catch maybe a little bit of Comic Tom there to fast forward through to see what books people are going after, so I can go the other way and find some books I need that nobody's going to be looking for, things like that. They're there, they're doing their channel, they're doing their thing. And then there's always Mr. Ethan Van Sciver and stuff like that, and what's going on with him. And then it blows my mind. I'll find out Diversity in Comics is still kicking with his 10 to 12,000 views per video and stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God, really? But what happened this month goes to something that I know everybody is aware of at the time here in December. I think it happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. And apparently a lot has gone down, because once you start looking at this stuff on YouTube, you get recommendations. You will pop back on there. I personally travel back to work. I listen to suspense, CBS murder mysteries. I listen to old radio dramas, audiobooks, right? Right now, there's a guy uploading Audible. I don't know how long it's going to last. Usually that stuff gets took down, but Audible, the theater in your mind. And he has Infinite Crisis and Secret Wars and things. There's Agatha Christie. There's a lot of good stuff on there. And that's what I mainly listen to. And I'm big into the Jim Cornette podcast, just for you people out there. I don't have to watch wrestling anymore. Okay. So these things show up in my feed, and that's where I will go down the rabbit hole. So full transparency is the stuff that like I no longer really take this stuff that serious. Okay. Sorry for the people that do. Sorry for the people who have watched my channel for a long time, but I think my track record shows that I try to keep things on level to where you know where I'm at for the people who hung around all these years. So talking about these things, this is more observation than it's some kind of emotional opinion. Right now, so we go back, and I'm going to show you something on the phone. And this video for me always kind of comes back on things right here. But back in July 18th, 2016, YouTube yet again was a whole different place. Now, what you got to understand about the history of YouTube is I've watched YouTube a long time, right before I even started making videos. You know, there's a community here, right? And you started out and you had like these real creative videos, like samurai dude who would do black backflips and hit it, fall on his face, right? You had the classic video shoes, okay? You know what I mean? We're going way back. You had Chocolate Rain, okay? You had Dramatic Hamster. You had characters and like little things. It was a real special place. And there's a Weezer song, a Weezer video that came out probably around, I can't believe I can't think of it, but it had all these things, the Mentos and the Pepsi and stuff. And they pulled a bunch of these inner YouTube stars in, and apparently that was like the pinnacle. And then we had things like communities popping up. It was like atheist channels, boob tube. Girls would react to videos and act like airheads and have their cleavage out, and people ranted against that. Some guy that had the word taxi in it. There was like these small YouTube celebrities, and then the communities were really forming and popping up, and you had skeptic communities and atheist communities, and all that really started from my point of view with what was it, Gamergate, like 2013 or 14, and all those people bled over into other places. And in the midst of this, you had the comic book community it's nothing like it was back in the day, and we were able to avoid a lot of that stuff just because of the people we were. We were all glad to be here, glad to see each other, and go on. And that other stuff started leaking. And a big one was Thunderfoot and Laughing Witch. All right. I know I'm all over the place, but you can look at these things. And this is when things started getting personal and people were having wars and people were trying to get people fired and things were blackmail and things ended up on the news. Laughing Witch was in the Baltimore, Maryland area. And she tried to get Thunderfoot fired. And she thought she did because they wrote a letter to the university that he worked at. And this made the local news in Baltimore because he did the bells and whistles of like, this is where she works. And could you just imagine that, your company, that your husband, I think they sold hot tubs or something. They all went and they did horrible reviews on their business. And they actually went to the news saying they were being cyber attacked and everything. Right. And then from there, it came to the skeptics and everything. All of a sudden there was like SJW wars. Right. And they came in, and you had people like Charming Man. I think Barry's still around. Doom popped up. Jeff Holiday, and I wish I could remember all these days and all these names and stuff, right? But the big one was like Woolly Bumblebee, and Woolly Bumblebee was some chick that people were aware of in real life, and she would come on, and they would stream, and they would have wars and reaction videos. Shoe on Head, still around. She was doing all this stuff. And I fell down the rabbit hole a little bit because I was just like fascinated. I was trying to figure out. It was like wrestling in the '80s all over for me. I'm like, is this real? Is this scripted? That looks kind of personal. They made the news. Couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. It was like this weird form of entertainment. And then all of a sudden, I started meeting these people in real life that considered themselves SJWs and stuff at the community college, like over in Dublin, Virginia, when I would go to a comic book convention there. And I would actually be having panels there where I'd be talking about Doctor Strange or Jack Kirby. And I started meeting these people in real life, and they're fucking weird. I'm like, this is a real thing, and I tried to keep it on common ground. It was more like I was actually studying them or trying to be real understanding or something. I was like, I got to wrap my head around this. And basically, I'm just going to say it, they're just freaking horrible people. Most of the people I met ended up in scandals. Teachers who were having these there was a teacher there, a professor, if you will, and he was telling me he knew my channel. And he was telling me how he had a group where it was just all women, and they would come in and they would talk about comics in their safe space and all this stuff like that. But he was the only man. And I was just sort of like thinking I was on to him from the get go, but I was still trying to I'm still trying to be positive, but I'm sitting here thinking, so you cut all these women off from men and they're all yours. Little did I know I was right, because 6 months later there was a scandal and he got in trouble. I mean, and that's what I was trying to say. So all this stuff was going on, and I was seeing all this stuff, and like I said, it was really affecting me where I was seeing it in real life. And then I had people coming after my channel. I don't know if you longtime viewers remember, but you would be watching me, and I would be live streaming what we had back then, and all of a sudden I would be down and I couldn't stream for 3 months. I had people coming after me because they were telling me, start talking about this, this, and this, or you'll be sorry, and I laughed at it. So my channel was actually under attack for a while. So I ended up going down the road there, and with all the other videos that were going on that I'm telling you about, I'm not trying to act like I was a pioneer. I did not start anything. I was there, but I ended up doing that SJWs are killing comics video or something like that, and that thing went viral, and I had to make a choice on what path I was going to go down with this YouTube thing, because I'm just a guy who does comic books on the side when he has time, and like to talk about it. And everything was changing, going away. Books were being, people were trying to ban and cancel comic book covers. And all this stuff. I saw all this stuff happen, and then a year later, after that, it was 3 videos. I made 3 videos talking about it. Moved on, and holy shit, the shit that came at me, right? And I'll tell you why it really came after me. It wasn't because of political views and stuff, right? And we'd had people come through here, filter in the community years before, trying to start shit, but we were such a tight knit stuff. I have a video called "My Level of Tolerance" because I was asked to speak about some drama that was going on. All those people are gone, and people have run because they're cowards and stuff, right? But anyway, so anyway, stuck to it. Things were going on. The channel was getting big, and then things were just changing, and then all this stuff was going online. And I was actually there, going back in like 2010, I think. I was actually on Twitter live watching Dan Slott go off on somebody, and all of a sudden we just had all these comic book creators and stuff like that acting nuts and having their reasons and things like that. But the problem is the quality of comics were starting to decline, and people just flip out and stuff, right? So anyway, 2016, we had that. A year later, there's this big movement. They end up being called Comicsgate. Ethan Van Sciver had nothing to do with it at the beginning of it, and Diversity in Comics was one of the first guys, and people got jealous of them like they did in the original comic book community. They disappeared. I'm not mentioning names because they're not even a fucking footnote in YouTube history. They don't deserve their name to be talked about. But anyway, and things just kind of blew up from there. They had their drama, they had their attacks, they had comic book pros and comic book indie people and comic book wannabes. Everybody like all of a sudden having this little war, and and of course pop culture went all to hell because of Disney. A lot of stuff was going on. We're talking Ghostbusters, Star Wars, and everything. Like I said, this is a review to get to where we're at and stuff, right? And you're going to see why. And everything was just going out of hell, and people were like, shut up. They were saying they were making it about anything about the product. People could not objectively look at this stuff and see that it was garbage. They could not objectively look and see that this stuff, or admit, they could see it, they just didn't want to admit it, that this stuff was garbage. And then people would get escalated emotionally, and things got really ugly, and the videos intensified, and people were jumping in because of the drama and everything, and these narratives were being written, and one side was not as good as the other, is what I'm trying to get at. Meanwhile, comic books get worse. Like the actual content, to where we get to a point where the one Marvel book people are talking about is Immortal Hulk. You know what I mean? There's all these books out there, all these comics out there, and people end up talking about one or two, and you have people getting angry, being like, "Hey, man, there are good books out there." And then we had the retailers come out, and they at these retail conventions go after Tom Brevoort and all these guys from Marvel, saying, "What are you doing? You're killing us with this garbage and stuff," right? And it ended up being like online wars and stuff. And then we find out that Marvel had hired a whole bunch of females, and it's not that they're female, it's just that their track record since then has shown that they are horrible people and are horrible at their job. That's the problem. You want to get, you're young, you want to give people a chance, but it seems like they spend more time stirring that shit than working. That's how it comes. It's what it looks like and stuff. And no, I'm not all over the place. It's just that this stuff goes so fast and been going on for so long. These are the benchmarks and the highlights. We're talking milkshake crew and stuff, right? And this is the problem for a lot of us out there when we've spent a lifetime keeping continuity of entire universes in our head, reading one book in the month of July and waiting 30 days in the month of August, and we can remember that story. And it's an 8-part story. We tend to remember things when it comes to stories. So there is a continuity to this. In all the chaos, we are human beings, and we like to, our minds try to make things and put them in an order. So this is a very linear. This is straightforward. Okay, it's still quite early here. Okay, so things go on. Comicsgate becomes a brand. Ethan Skyver's doing that. I've spoke before how he even admits it. That's the thing. It's not like I'm yelling conspiracy theory, but he ends up trademarking, copywriting, putting it right on his books that he's crowdfunding. A lot of people start making a lot of money. It becomes a business, and in order for that business to keep going and to keep people interested, they use YouTube as a means to stir the pot, call the stuff out, still have rivalries and all this stuff. And if you've been around long enough, you've seen how people, the higher ups of these comic book companies had to have stepped in, because a lot of people would lose their minds on social media talking about these videos and YouTube acknowledging them. It's called the Barbara Streisand effect. That's how it sort of became big, because people who didn't know what was going on would hear about people talking about it, and if they just ignored it, it would have went away. And one of the people who really keeps losing their minds over and over was Mark Waid. I remember when he went after Rich Johnston, and people love saying you guys on the left will end up eating each other up and everything like that. But they came up with a list of something like the top 100 most influential people in comics in the year 2000 whatever, or maybe it was top 50 or something like that. And I remember, I think it was Mark Waid flipped out when they had to admit that a channel called Diversity in Comics was influential. And I remember seeing Rich Johnson commenting back and forth with, I guess it was Mark Waid, you can correct me if I'm wrong, of like, if you hadn't talked about this guy, we wouldn't have had to put him on the list. They were trying to acknowledge it and stuff. And then these guys ended up, like, Diversity in Comics ended up on Comedy Central. I don't know if you guys know that. He ended up on some show, and I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? That's either here or there. I'm trailing off, right? So as you can see, it becomes a marketing thing. Now they have to stir it up. They have to do things. And where a lot of what I was getting at is, like, a lot of people really have gotten off the social media or stopped talking about it. It has completely disappeared, but it's not rampant like it was. And if you notice what happened this month, there was a bit of a rejuvenation. Now we are in the present, right? I have scanned over a lot of things. I have given you the benchmarks. This gave you a stream of consciousness of where we are, because this has been going on for so long, right? But there's a lot of things that happen, right? Number one, Mark Miller has entered the scene because of a comic book shop, I believe, in Florida, that has a channel. I think the guy's name is Glenn. And he made the video where, in the middle of just a day in the comic book shop, he came out and he started saying things that had been said since 2015 and 16, about they're making horrible comics. They're not making them about characters. They need to stop inserting themselves. They need to do this and do that, and how to fix comics, and why they're shit and why they're crap. It's not new news, but something about this guy being a shop owner, something about him, he's got that X factor that caught everyone's attention. And there's tons of reaction videos and stuff, right? And then Mark Miller enters the scene out of nowhere. A couple months ago, he was talking about how he wanted to save comics, and he had the idea of, like, let's bring in all these creators back and everything. He had a plan, right? And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, at work, and it's almost lunch break. I go to my phone to see what time it is, and I've got all these alerts because of my algorithm, and once I click on one of these, the algorithm strengthens, you know what I mean? So I'm not a victim here. I didn't bury my head in the sand, but I didn't go looking for it, but when it popped up, I sure didn't go around the corner. I admit it, and I see this thing called cancel pigs. So it's gone from SJWs to NPCs to where now they're cancel pigs, and people, oh my God, they grabbed a hold of this, right? They're rejuvenated. We've got Comic Book Palace. We have our fort, right? I'm picturing an actual castle. I'm picturing a moat, and I'm picturing everybody on top. I want to say King Arthur, but I'm seeing you know, the whole Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? I would taunt you again. Your mother smells of elderberries and all this stuff, right? And instead of knights on horses coming at them and stuff like that, it's a bunch of crazy pigs, coming at them, right? And all of a sudden the war is rejuvenated, and the whole time that they've been yelling that there's a culture war going on, I'm like, this is just something that's just been going on forever. We're here we are again repeating history. And like I said, some of the people, the only person I can think of that is not back in the mix is Dan Slott. That blows my mind, right? But anyway, we've got Mark Waid losing his mind again. We got Diversity in Comics talking about Mags Pistachio, and everybody's talking. It's the same characters returning, right? It's like an old sitcom that was sort of dying down and went away, and then they had the reunion show. And give you an idea of how long this has been going on, 2024, in about a week, we're going to have New Year's Eve. I think it's 8 days. We're going to have 2024. So technically, we are going on. If you go to way back to where the little seeds were planted, at least from my viewpoint and stuff, and for me, the seeds were planted was when a Batgirl book was canceled because of the cover. The artist who did it referenced Killing Joke, right? This just really happened to be on my desk. I'm hanging stuff up, right? But anyway, he had a callback to Killing Joke because on the cover was Batgirl and it was Joker painting a smile on her face. And people um, said that image called back to something horrible, right? So I'm sitting here like, we're here again, right? But this time the tables are turned. We have Comicsgate getting there. We got Cancel Pigs coming up. We got new names for everybody. We got a cast of characters returning back online. Everybody's rejuvenated and everything like that. And what are they bringing up? It used to be they were bringing up that Batman special, right? Now we have channels who are so needing, I've always said one side is no better than the other. I mean, I really feel that way, right? But they used to bring up that Batman episode, or they would bring out horrible comics and stuff that people were writing stuff. So right now, right before all this happened, if you go back and look at the videos, and that's kind of cool about being on the outside of this and stuff, everybody was bringing back Snowflake and Safe Space. They were going back to a book that never came out, where they were rebooting or whatever, brought in this dude who had never worked in comics before, and they did the New Warriors, and they were horrible. People got powers from a myth that was the internet or something, right? It was like horrible. It was parody. You thought it was satire, and you found out this guy was being serious about it, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you, man. These people are both dependent on each other for the attention, right? And then you have channels like this and other channels like that end up becoming sort of casualties in a way. And this is not whining. This is not crying. Here we go. Gore Vidal, always a pleasure to see you, sir. Thank you for the very nice email. You really brightened my day up when I saw that. Anyway, Glenn on Comics Palace had voiced some similar complaints on his YouTube channel years ago. Thank you, right? If you go back to the beginning of the video, I gave full disclosure that I'm not really that deep into this. You know what I mean? But anyway, what is new is that the monetized Comicsgate type channels grabbed onto this recent quote and went with it. There we go. And then we have Wade Miller's involvement is the drama that fed the fire. Yeah, we're saying the same thing. And you were just bottom lining that in your quotes. I'm sort of doing a stream of consciousness thing, right? This is basically me venting, to just get it. It's in there. Let's get it out. See where it goes. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm seeing the same tactics being used by the other side that the other side used to use and stuff. Like we flip things, we switch things. It doesn't reek of desperation per se, but it definitely reaches of opportunity for people to keep this going, right? Because the Comicsgate books and the groups and the GoFunding and everybody that comes on the channel and the people that have been blacklisted, there is a Whisper network. This stuff has gone on for so long that seeing a lot of the of the carpet being pulled up and seeing all the dirt underneath, man, really for a lot of people that look at stuff does taint some books. You know what I mean? It really does taint your reading, and that's sad. That is sad, but that's just part of life and growing up. You never want to meet your heroes. You know, so anyway, but the casualties that came up in this and stuff like that, and casualties is being rather dramatic, but I think you get my point of what I'm trying to say is that you have channels who have just tried to steer across, and they are dependent on books that were coming out to get excited, to read something, to want to tell people about it. I really enjoyed this. Check it out, things like that. Because if you notice, um, there are very few channels, and I hate to say few channels. This is compared to what it used to be here. They are still there. There are people who still talk about comics and do reviews, but they're very far and few between, and you still can't get past some of them. And unfortunately, some of those channels I did have to stop watching. Top the Fourth Wall. The people were trying to tell me about I checked out Comics Trope, and I must apparently just hit the right videos because I would see some of these people. At Top the Fourth Wall, I don't mind saying this because I don't know the guy. It's not personal, but he's just angry video game nerd with comics. And one of the first things I got to watch with him when people were telling me about him was martial law. I absolutely love martial law. Martial law is right here on the shelf for easy access and stuff, right? And he trashed the book. And it was because of political reasons, not because of context, not because of the story. His political views reeked in there. I watched comic tropes and stuff, and he is very far left leaning. Do I care what these people's political stuff is? No, right? Have I ever come on here and totally, completely raged against them and stuff? No, I have not, but I have mentioned them in my displeasure, but it's about the videos, never them personally. I don't even know their names, okay? And see, that's what's all right. Critiques and things like that is what we used to do, and it was balanced. You know what I mean? But everybody just kind of got political and all this stuff. And I was able to slow down and kind of go back and look at some of the earlier stuff and some of this stuff. And like I said, I just hit those right videos, but it was tainted for me, right? Not a big deal, right? And then you have people sort of like me, some other people who aren't here anymore. I'm not being vague purposely, but over the years, I've learned that when I give opinions like this, I try not to mention too many names because they would get flack. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I didn't mean to bring that on you, brother. It happened 3 or 4 times really bad for some people. One person did end up quitting YouTube. So anyway, but they come on there and what they do is they don't enjoy the narrative. Okay. A narrative is so different than truth. All right. A narrative is where it's what keeps a story alive, right? One's sort of like a history lesson, maybe sort of a documentary, but even those have this flair of drama in them to keep people interested. But you break it down to the facts. A lot of people don't realize that with storytelling, over the years, your fairy tales, your legends of King Arthur, your legends of Robin Hood, little sideline here for like 30 seconds, but there are different areas of storytelling, right? The style that they did, the King Arthur legend, the Robin Hood legend. A lot of these are based supposedly on real people and stuff. If you want to dig into that stuff like that, but it wasn't until God, what was it? Somewhere between the 13th and 15th century that stories and legends ended up being written with romanticization, oh, they were romanticized, right? And that's where you got the love interest. That's where Maid Marian came in, okay? And all of a sudden, they romanticized the stories and they got a whole new life and stuff like that. So stories do change over the time. It's an evolution that keeps them alive, right? That's why we still know who King Arthur is. That's why we still know who Robin Hood is, right? So, but if you go back to the facts and look at these people for what they really were and stuff like that, it's not that exciting. They were doing great things, but it's a short story and there's nothing really that inspiring about it and stuff, right? So by adding to these things and adding a flair of drama to it and stuff, you get that. So people end up enjoying the narrative in the story. And we are creatures who enjoy stories. That's one of the reasons I love reading and talking about things in a more pure form and stuff, right? If you go back, we've always told stories. You got the cave paintings in France that they discovered, right? You have oral histories and lessons and stories and passed down over the campfire over for generations before people had a written language. That is just part of us, is telling the stories as a form of communication and talking about things and legend and taking pride and giving a sense of community and even tribalism. Back when we were like, nomads and cavemen and things like that, right? That's the whole thing. And this is all fact, badly told. So we're going to take a break there because I've been going for 30 minutes. Oh, what do we have here? We have Gray Man Media. A lot of this is due to the failure of the comic book movies and the box office establishment, comics losing out to manga. That's another thing that's happened this month. Thank you for bringing up the manga. And those gatekeeping creators ripping what they sowed. And look, what Gray Man has said this, and there's a couple ways you could read this in your head depending on your emotional state right now, right? Does he have venom in this? No. The way I'm reading it, these are facts because I was going to bring up the manga thing. Wait, that's one of the things that actually had me not wanting to make a video at first. What we got here? We got Parker. Oh man, haven't seen you. Felt like I haven't seen you in forever. Great to see you. Capitalism will eventually win. Disney losing money hand over fist with MCU. The big two will have to make good stories eventually to make money. Absolutely. Gore Vidal. The Comicsgate channels are an extension of talk radio when it emerged in the 90s. Rage rants living in absolutely. What is it? What it does to their blood pressure, only their physician knows. Yeah, that's what I mean. There are people who do believe in this stuff. There's always people who drink the Kool-Aid all the way, or they are passionate about it and stuff. And how do I know this? Because I was one of the people with certain other things over the years with YouTube and the community. You know what I mean? Um, and then there are people who know exactly what they're doing and they're seeing opportunity. And believe it or not, if I had to pick which one I would defend, it would people being taking the advantage and seeing the opportunity. This is why I don't rant against Ethan Van Sciver. I saw Ethan Van Sciver on Facebook in 2009 and what he was doing on Facebook, and it was Dennis the Menace uh, type behavior. Let's put it that way, right? And everything like that. So when he started coming on YouTube and stuff, I knew what was coming. Let me break that down. Let me break that down. I thought I knew what was coming. I just didn't know it was going to be exponentially accelerated. Okay, you know what I mean? I didn't know how big it was going to be. And I was so excited when he had his when he had his channel started, because there was times I would laugh at him on Facebook, and then there was times where I was like, he is an ass. Oh man, what we got here? Wade fed the fire, absolutely. Miller talked to a retailer who brought a retailer meeting. Miller talked to a retailer who brought up a point a retailer meeting already complained to Marvel about in 2016. I kind of touched on that. I sort of fed it in my sentence about all the retailers at the retailer convention going after him, right? I mean, this is going on in front of them. This is, the denial and acting like it's not, trying to act like it's not happening also fed the fire is ridiculous, right? The problem is that stores don't know how to reach customers without Wednesday Warriors reading superheroes. Right. Um, all right. Okay. The smaller publishers need to be more aggressive in their marketing. Paolo, if you ever want to sit down with me and do a video like this with me on a live stream, just give me a yell, man. We'll make a time. You're right on track, in my opinion, too. The smaller publishers need to be more aggressive in their marketing, contact stores directly, and set up incentives themselves to reach the audience. Here's the difference with this with what I'm doing and with this comment and what other people are doing. But there are people doing this. We have somebody, and I have done this before too. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that right here we need more of this. What's the solution? What can be tried? Somebody is at least trying to come up with a solution. And people were giving solutions with this stuff. They were right here and writing at them stuff, and they weren't being listened to. And you don't listen to people, that's when things also escalate, when people don't feel like they're being heard and they're being dismissed. How to reach the normies is still a mystery to me, though. I have ideas, you know. I try to imagine what a Skyver family Thanksgiving looks like now, given how different the brothers are. It's like something you'd see on TLC or Bravo Channel. Gore, at the beginning of this, when I did my disclaimer for full transparency, I'm treating this exactly like it's an Enquirer magazine, like it is Honey Boo Boo, the Kardashians, and whatever, and Sister Wives, and all that trash TV. That is exactly where I went with it. It's at towards the beginning of the video. If you weren't here at the beginning, we're on the same wavelength. That's what I'm trying to get at here, right? So getting back to like YouTube and stuff, right? What's going on and stuff like that is, everybody's sort of dependent on one another. I have lost my train of thought a little bit. Y'all can comment on there to get me back on if you want. But coming back in there, I'm just at a point where I think I've vented a little bit. And vented's not the right word. It's sort of cathartic. Like I said, I've read a lot of smut news, and it's all kind of gelling in my head because I also write narratives in my head. I like seeing the big picture, and that's where I've gotten with, like, I've seen all this before. You know what I mean? It just had some blasting caps there that started it all over again, right? It's a rerun, guys. It's a rehash. If you've ever seen a movie, we had Star Wars, and then all of a sudden you had Battlestar Galactica. And then if you go and watch The Last Jedi, it's Battlestar Galactica again. You know what I mean? And that's where we're at, man. This stuff is just sort of repeating itself now. It's just a different cast of characters. And then the regular cast from the original is popping in there and sprinkling in and everything like that. But there's a lot of people that have gone, they moved on, and um, but it just blows my mind how some channels have survived for years saying the same thing over and over, and they actually have went from being what you could perceive as the good guys, and I'm saying that loosely here, to where they've gone over the same people. Diversity in Comics talking about Max Mustachio, and I cannot remember the other writer's name. She was on the X-Men books and stuff like that. She's come and gone. But someone pointed out to me, and I'm being serious. I do talk to people behind the scenes, and they do let me know what's going on sometimes, just like I let them know when I see something. But I remember the video where there was a writer. God, I can picture the writer. I can't think of her name. But anyway, but he said that he felt like she was mentally retarded or something, and he was being serious. And I was like, "Well, as a social worker who works with intellectually delayed people going on 25 years, I was like, he crossed the line." So that's what I mean. The stuff was getting there. Like I said, I never felt like there was. I always felt they were the same tactics. It's just the context put one in a better light than the other. Some people did have the side of right behind them, but that's not why they were there. The purest of intentions were not there. And so I watched people cross the line back and forth here and there. And I guess that's maybe why some people may consider it a war. It's ridiculous. It's not a war. It's clicks and stuff like that, and selling books and everything like that. Oh man, but anyway, the casualties and stuff, man, all the channels that people still want to talk about comics and stuff. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of great comic books coming out. I think people that were selling that narrative I was talking about uh, are finally starting to admit it, from what I can tell, right? Now, here's how bad things are. And I almost made a video about this, but that would have been an emotional reaction because it just made me roll my eyes so fucking hard that I heard some clicking and snapping. But basically, there were comic book professionals. I want to say it was the Heather Antos. The fact that Heather Antos and a Twitter person named Renfamous have come back into light for some people, I'm sure they never disappeared, blows my mind, right? Renfamous is another one of those cast of characters who, like, there's no way she has a job. She was constantly in people's business on Twitter 24/7 with Comicsgate. But anyway, but the manga sales that are coming on. My buddy Josh and I were talking yesterday. We've seen the same thing. I have mentioned it here before over the last year and stuff, but go to like a Books a Million, go to a bookstore and look at the graphic novel sections, right? I can think of one bookstore in Johnson City, Tennessee, where they still have a very sizable graphic novel section, but I haven't been there in a while. But everywhere else, and people have made videos, they've taken pictures, and it's out there. But the graphic novel sections are shrinking, and the mangas are taking over more and more and more because people are buying those. My wife has an incredible manga collection upstairs. Okay. Um, there's some videos I shot upstairs where I made sure to put them in the background and stuff. And she's become so knowledgeable in such a short amount of time because I showed her Elfin Lied on Amazon. And when I told her that the Amazon show had a different ending thanks to the manga, she got them all and devoured them. So now we have all this great stuff up there. And yes, I have taken the Pepsi challenge, guys. I have read some of the manga. The Girl from the Other Side beats the hell out of anything I've read in the last 3 years. Okay. So I have taken the Pepsi challenge. There are mangas out there that just do it. And what have these people done who are part of the Whisper networks that you've heard about? And I hope they get a new stick for Christmas so they can keep stirring the shit and stuff like that for all these channels and stuff. But they have taken the manga sales and are claiming that American comic book are part of those sales. I want you to think about that, right? Two separate genres, okay, have come in and they want to take credit for what they're doing while they are not helping the quality of what they're doing. Okay, I didn't know I was going to get a little emotional here, so I'm watching what I'm saying. I'm ready to just cuss like a sailor and call people dumbasses finally, But I don't know who I feel more sorry for, right? Because it is pathetic. I don't know who I feel more sorry for: the people who actually believe that bullshit, or the people saying that bullshit who actually believe it, think they believe it. Um, and that's what gets me. Some of the stuff is so transparent for me, right? And it is transparent for a lot of people, and I just don't understand how it keeps going on because it is obvious. Um, you can. I don't know if people are in denial. I don't know if they're afraid of not having some community to get on. I am very thankful for the time that I grew up on, and I'm actually thankful for the things that I went through to become a person who can still think for themselves. And I don't have this fear of ending up a little ostracized, I guess. I don't know. But at the end of the day, people need to be able to look at themselves in the mirror. You need to pick your battles, decide what is important to you and stand by those. And then there's times where you got to be a stoic and realize you don't have to have an opinion about everything, right? Oh, we got here. Oh, wow. Whoa, what we got in here? Oh man, little Jimmy Fireball did something I was about to touch on myself here, right? Okay, I feel that people talk about older collector editions and not the new stuff anymore. Marvel just repackages the classics, old stuff to sell. That's actually where I was going next. Oh man, we're all on. See, this is what I'm saying. There is a kismet with this stuff. There are like-minded people all thinking the same thing. There's no big epiphanies. There's just people putting stuff together in different ways, but it's different roads leading to the same place. I think I know the YouTuber you're talking about, Tim. He's a fellow Texan who lives a few hours from me. He's made quite a living feeding the trout. Yes, you do know who I'm talking about. We'll just leave it at that. For publishers, manga are part of the sales. For professionals, they aren't, and pros don't seem to get that supporting 100% imports means they'll never work again. Exactly. That is a great point, Paolo. That is absolutely correct. And oh, I love that. I'm taking this in and stuff, right? I want you guys to read this, right? By claiming that manga sales are part of the American comics sales, attaching themselves like a fucking barnacle to the to a a majestic boat. You know what I mean? Okay, they are helping kill their own sales. They are promoting manga instead of their stuff. That is absolutely right. Wow. Well done, Paolo. That is fantastic. So to go over here with little Jimmy Fireball. Now, what I'm going to tell you next, I really don't know what year it happened. Okay, I do feel that it's been within 10. We'll do it that way, right? Okay, so basically, there are facsimile editions coming out. Okay, there are dollar comics that they had. I know I got a box full of them here. And of course, like you said, there are collected editions, there are omnibuy, all the stuff like here. Epic Collections and everything. And there's channels like Strange Brain Parts, and like I said, there's still people out there talking about comics and stuff, and there's people who are really trying to be full time doing it, and they're not talking about the new stuff. Actually, the newest stuff that I have seen is Tom King's Rorschach, and that video didn't do very well. But they still go back to things like Dave Cerebus, doing sections of it and things like that. People are going back. Now, the thing that I'm talking about with Dan Didio of all people, and forgive me for not knowing what year it is. Sometimes this stuff all just kind of runs together in a big picture in my head, is that apparently he was at a comic book convention and they released something from the past, and it outsold the current comics that they had. And he was asking the audience, what did you think about it? And they all clapped for the older stuff, the reprinted stuff, the facsimile edition, whatever it was. And he tried to lecture them, saying, no, we can't go back to that stuff. We have to move forward and have new stuff and go forward with it and stuff. And you see where Dan Didio ended up with that. So that just kind of tells me there was something else going on, to where the audience is still there while they're not listening to them. I don't understand that the audience is still there, because a lot of this older stuff is still what people are talking about and still buying, and it's not nostalgia, people. Nostalgia may be a part of it for some people, and it may not be a part of it at all for some people, but it's not 100%. It's because of the quality of the storytelling, the quality of the art, the it factor, the fact that it is actually about the characters. We're going full circle here with old Glenn at Comic Palace and stuff, right? They're reading things where this is a Hulk story. This isn't somebody inserting themselves there. This isn't a young adult book where Starfire has a daughter that looks like the author of the book, and it's garbage and things like that, right? They take a character, they look at what the character is about, where did the character come from, and what makes that character, what kind of story would that character have. Um, they look at the roots of what they do and stuff, right? So basically, we'll take Marv Wolfman and George Perez Teen Titans, for example. There's interviews. He's talked about it several times. He made a mystical character in Raven. He made a techno character in Cyborg. He took Wonder Girl and he had Robin, and on and on. And he did those things so that when he felt like doing a mystical fantasy story, we had Raven as the linchpin. If he felt like doing old school superheroes a little bit, he had Wonder Girl. If he felt like referencing the Doom Patrol, getting a little Silver Age there, he had Beast Boy. You see what I'm saying? If he wanted a detective story, he had Dick Grayson and stuff like that, right? That's what those characters are all about. That's not what they do anymore, and we know it, so they're not the characters and stuff, right? So yeah, the older stuff is what people are talking about. The older stuff is what people crave. And what really bothers me is that this garbage has been going on for so long that there are new people coming up. Now, let me explain this. I keep referencing how long I think this has been going on, and I'm going with 9 years, that I can actually kind of pinpoint and really, give you examples of, and videos and characters and people who made YouTube videos and people who got on Twitter and stuff like that. In 9 years, people have graduated high school and they have graduated college they went through. You join the military, you sign an 8-year contract. You can be 2 to 3 years active and then 5 years inactive, where you can be called back. You can have people who have broken up, gotten married, remarried. You have people who may have gotten married, now they have kids in elementary school. And then you have kids who may have, that's a lot of things can happen in a lot of time. And now we have hit a generation that this is how it always was in their eyes. And then they have to rediscover this stuff, which is why I think facts, truth, and some kind of documentation or something like that. I don't know. I used to talk about how our YouTube channels and talking about the history of these things was important, and they're still out there. There's storytelling channels and stuff that are big and stuff, even though they don't do anything original. They just rehash what's on Wikipedia and throw some comic book panels on there. I guess you got to have a little bit of charm. I don't know. Maybe there's some character there and stuff like that. But this stuff has gone for so long. We'll go back to DC 52. You know what I mean? We'll go back to the beginning of the real end, the Bendis era with Avengers Disassembled, going back 20 years and stuff. But this is how comics were for people for a whole generation now. And when we talk about these things, talk about the golden age and things like that, I get it. It sounds so old to them. I get it. I've been that kid. We've all been that kid when we're younger and we want something new and fresh and stuff, right? So there's a whole generation of people growing up where they hear more about the drama that is going on than the actual works. And then they have to rediscover these people who have been slammed and criticized and acted crazy. And I am reference people like Alan Moore and things like that, right? It's people who had things hyped, but they were fantastic and groundbreaking in their era. Um, and one of the people I'm going to give an example of is my son. Um, I grew up with Michael Jackson, Jackson 5 on the radio, Jackson 5 on Carol Burnett, Michael Jackson at the 83 MAs doing the moonwalk, uh, all of it. You know, Michael Jackson mania. Michael Jackson was cool, okay? And then we get the eccentric Michael Jackson towards the end of the 80s, going into the 90s. And by the time that my son is born 25 years ago, the only Michael Jackson he's known was the nutcase. And I would try to explain to him that Michael Jackson was cool at one time and he was not having it. And that is the casualty of current comics now, because I have seen it with pop culture. Okay. And the reason Michael Jackson stays in my mind is I was actually with my son when we were seeing Transformers 2. When in the theater, everybody's phones lit up, and we got outside and we found out that Michael Jackson had passed away, and that's where we had the Michael Jackson talk. So that's how long I for some reason I kept that in mind on the perceptions, the perceptions of being there and being able to look back and how things feel very old for people. So when you kill the narrative that people have bought, people don't like the romance and the narrative or whatever they're into or how they think things are to be blown up, because a narrative can be anything to anybody and anybody can take the pieces and come up with something, right? So that's why I gave you a very linear way of I remember things. So I'm trying to be sure that I'm not shaping things with my narrative while I vent and talk about this stuff, right? But there are truths in this comment section, as I knew, uh, with people out there and stuff like that, that a lot of people can clearly see past the narrative that's been built by both sides and all this stuff, that comics are in trouble. The comic books are not selling like they did. The comic books are um, just not that good, and that trying to be nice here, but there's going to be no nice way to say it. It's the shits right now, right? And there are tons of people who get mad when you say that for whatever reasons, but it's a truth. The denial cannot be said anymore, cannot be put out there anymore, and we outnumber the people who are just not wanting to admit this. Too many people have too much stuff to gain, be it on a social level, a monetary level, whatever, keeping a job, whatever. They have to play the game to keep a job is basically what I think a big factor of this in. And the reason that it's not a full-blown culture war, and the fact that some of the things that have been said here, that it's not going to win out in the end of the day, is that a couple things are going to happen. Publishing can stop, and that is a reality, okay, more than ever. And the thing about comic books is that, the death of comics have been talked about since the 50s. Seems like every 15 to 20 years, comics are supposed to die. So I don't think that's a trope nowadays and stuff, because you can't get anybody to buy this stuff. Can't even get them to the movies and stuff, right? And basically, the biggest casualty of all this isn't the fighting back, isn't really about calling stupidity out, calling the narrative out, calling all of this out. The biggest killer of all this is going to be the indifference. Okay. And again, I'm putting this out because I have seen it. The indifference of not giving a shit about what's being put out now, not giving a shit about everything that's going online. The people that I have seen with a true passion of comics are the ones that are going to the comic book conventions, grassroots to the big ones, and they're still buying comics, and they're doing crowdfunding, and they're getting on eBay, and they're filling in gaps, and they're getting those books that they want to keep reading and stuff, right? Because they still had the passion for the medium, okay? Even if it's not the creator, okay? Even if it's not the company. Stan Lee, one of the few things I give Stan Lee credit for is saying, hey, man, every comic you put out could be somebody's first comic. It's one of the reasons we had the recap of previous issues of storylines. This could be somebody's comic. What has that changed into now? Every comic could be somebody's last comic. It's a jumping off point. Okay. The reality that we're seeing now, because I had those feelings, was when Avengers Endgame came out. Endgame was an ironic, unintentionally ironic title for a movie because that was it for people. Okay, this is where I end. They had given you at that time, oh my God, was it 10 years? Oh my God. Anyway, what was it? 33 movies. They had given you their time, their money, and they got a satisfying end to the story, right? Something that rarely happens, right? And now it's just garbage. You know what I mean? People out here, like I said at the beginning, only have so much time. And with things are now, so much money as well. And there's hundreds of thousands of books to read. There's many comic books, there's actual books, there's video games, there's movies and stuff. And it's all about finding what you want to spend, something that you cannot buy back, more precious than money and everything, is what are you going to spend your time reading? Are you going to do the quality stuff? Or are you going to play around with this garbage and stuff, right? And a lot of people just don't have time for mediocrity, right? Every book does not have to be an epic, right? I enjoy things like Captain Carrot just as much as I enjoy Watchmen on some days, right? But they stay true to the character. And when you pick up that book, you know what you're in for. I've got an Alan Moore book. I have a Grant Morrison book. I have a Scott Shaw book. I've got a Sergio Aragonis book, right? You know what you're in for just from hearing those, right? So yeah, there's really no excuse for this other than playing the game to keep employed and make money and stuff because they have really killed themselves, right? This is really, they have done it to themselves. They have had plenty of people yelling and screaming with ways you can fix things, or at least telling them how they were fucking up. And now things have turned now that they cannot get around lying and pointing fingers and everything with the quality of what's going on. It's been a very slow death of watch. It's basically watching somebody kill themselves over a long period of time, and it can be heartbreaking. Oh, we got some comments about newbies here. Ooh, look at this. We got a lot. We're going to go through some comics. Oh, we got. I feel like people talk about older collected editions, not the new stuff anymore. Marvel just repackages classic old stuff. Yeah, there's storylines that people still recall and they can still read to this day. And I know we've already seen that comment, but still, it was, the quality is there, right? I think, here we go. For publishers, manga are part of sales. For professionals, they aren't, and pros don't seem to get that supporting 100% imports means deliver work again. That's where we left off, and that's true. I've already spoke about that. Here we go. Now I think I'm caught up. Okay, locally, manga and American comic book readers are like Protestants and Catholics, separate places of worship, different opinions about the medium, and those that stray into the churches as heretics, right? One of the things I am going to point out with this is that the sense of community, and it is still there, right? Just it just seems like you can't. It's Russian roulette online, but in real life, when you're at a comic book convention and stuff. Just yesterday, I was at an antique shop before I went to the movies and totally talked to a random guy who started talking to me because we were flipping through comic book boxes. There's always been this thing. Oh, don't freeze up. Okay. There's always been this thing, like what you're saying here, that, different opinions about the medium and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still the medium. People still read comics. We can talk about comics when somebody doesn't like something. They at least listen and you move on. Very civilized. Compared to what we have online. But the heretic thing, absolutely, yeah. Also, I'm leapfrogging off of Paulo Costa's point. Why aren't American comics publishing anthology comics? Mangas are primary anthologies that root out the failure and publish the good stuff. Why? Yeah, I have opinions on this, but unfortunately, they are just opinions. I really do try to limit myself, though. know my limitations, know what I know, and try not to speculate too much unless I actually call out speculation. But I have ideas of why that is. Um, Oh, Paolo's right here. Anthologies have been irrelevant in America since superhero publishers joined the direct market full force in 81. The exact number of reasons this happens is complex, and I can go on for hours. I think, okay, the year that you picked, the Apollo, is the only one I would like continue a conversation on because, like, you're right, you got a big part of it. Um, we move on instead of getting caught up in conversation here. But the manga that sells the US are the collected editions, not the phone books. And I have seen some horrible manga. Let me put it that way. Early days of Books a Million, when they were bringing in anything and you get mangas for $1.50 to $2, saw some horrible stuff. So don't think it's all gold, at the end of that rainbow. Whoops. My friends' kids like to draw manga and anime characters on their electronic devices or on paper. They rarely find inspiration from a Spider-Man or Batman. They like the films though, but it ends there, right? Well, you know what? I can kind of go with the kids because despite having a Deadpool manga, like I was there at the beginning, my brother and I were at the beginning of Deadpool, and it still is so surreal to me that that character has taken off and been what he is. But I can't stand him in the comics, yet I enjoy the movies. Go figure. You see what I'm saying? And it's still Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds, has made a translation of Deadpool that's fantastic. Palo Costa, but the problem with the views, nothing American comics is selling because they don't know what is popular, who can write or draw. And anthology books would be for newbies in comics. A problem with this gray man here is that I don't know if it's so much they don't know what is popular, but they have given it up for pandering. Okay. In the 90s, for example, and this is a weak point that I'm making. I totally get it. Because I'm not going to come to a conclusion here. Don't get me wrong, because you are right. They're not putting out what is popular, but they may not know what is popular because they're too into the pandering and they're too egocentric into their selves, right? Which plays into what Comic Book Castle, whatever Comic Book Glenn from Comic Book Castle said. They don't know what's popular because they're all about themselves. Which is, there you go, right? In the 90s, I'm still shattered the fact that Herb Trimpe started getting a Rob Liefeld like style. And when Paolo and I were on with Jared Osborne on a Cavern of Chaos show, I think that's where I did it. You know, I think it's where I did it, but I think I found out that Herb Trimpe did that on his own. Supposedly nobody asked him to start drawing like Rob Liefeld. So yeah, they are aware of what can be popular, in my opinion. If they would listen. They also don't listen anymore. They don't want the feedback. I'm not sure they appeal to newbies without several money distributors rearranging. The old guys are all, I don't want to pay for characters I don't like. See, Paolo's got the business mind of this. What we got here? Parker Rizzo. We got three more guys. It could be older collectors were spoiled. Loving Rockets, Watchmen, Miller, DD, Titans, and X-Men, send back Turtles. Okay, that LOL helps me with the tone of this and stuff, but you got to remember when those books came out, the people creating them had no idea that they were going to be huge and that they were going to be such inspirations for people and change the game and stuff, right? Watchmen, I think maybe Lin Wynn knew that he had definitely had, they're not dumb. They could read this stuff and be like, this is gold, this is going to sell. But there's no way they knew it was going to like redo the entire industry. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's the quickest way I can say that, right? So were we spoiled or were we lucky? All right. So I would go with both. You know what I mean? I did not, I just got my first actual issue of Love and Rockets a few weeks ago and it's mildewed. I didn't read Watchmen until I think 88 with the first trade. The Miller Daredevil, I bits and pieces over the years. Titans and X-Men, I actually kind of tried to run from a little bit because I was cantankerous. If something was popular, I stayed away from it. Sandman, I was on board with from the first fucking advertisement I saw, and then the Turtles, they won me over when I read those first 3 pages of the first reprint of the first issue and stuff, right? So the fact about the quality of these that we grew up with this and stuff like that, yeah. Um, but you also got to understand with DC, Jeanette Kahn came in, took over DC, and she always had this philosophy of like, she kept her mind about it. She wasn't real flighty about it, but it was like we have creators. She gave them opportunities to create with a certain amount of freedom. That's what's missing. Now you're got to be part of. You got to be afraid. And see, and nobody's come out. No creators have come out and said this wasn't true. That's what gets me, right? If they have, it's been like it wasn't. How can I say this? There wasn't a bunch of enthusiasm when they tried to say this, but it seems like they've given out this idea, whether it's true or not, that they have to be afraid for their jobs if they veer off or something like that. That's stifling creativity, you know. It's borderline actual real fascism, if that's true. And did I already read this one? I don't think there's the same pressure to be profitable on the big two since they are owned by the monolithic corporations, so they don't have to be good until they are forced to. And that's why we are actually at a point where the big two could actually go away just because of this. I think you're absolutely right. I think they are just a reason to keep an IP going, keep the copyright by keeping it published and stuff like that. And that's why that's probably one of the reasons. That's probably one of the big reasons that the inmates are running the asylum and stuff, right? How people hand over power blows my mind. These people show up, they get on there, and it's like they just give up their power. I don't think people realize what they're doing when they're doing that, right? In the household that I was in and stuff like that, I had to fight to keep some kind of power. You know what I mean? Like that's why I will never give it up. That's why I will not bow. That's why I think for myself when I think. And it's not an egocentric thing. It's not a I don't know, taking over and trying to be the leader type of thing. It's one of those things where you just have a bullshit detector. You know what I mean? So I'm going superhero comics were meant for an audience that turned over every 5 years. All the conflict and drama of the fans would go away if people didn't hold on for too long. You are absolutely right, and there's always going to be that part of the audience, right? But since the 70s, in my opinion, thanks to Marvel, I think, right? Uh, I have met more people who have hung in there since the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, into today that have hung in there. Um, and yes, there are those fair weather readers, and there are those people who were into this for a while, then they grow up and they get other interests and stuff, right? So, but there is a fraction of an audience that sticks around. And I think that is the revelation for a lot of people that is new. There are still stigma in comics that have survived since the 50s and probably the 40s. I'm trying to think who it was. I just read how there was a great comic book creator who was embarrassed when girls saw him buying comic books. I would love to remember who that is because I just read this 3 or 4 days ago and stuff. I remember hearing stories about how Al Milgrom and Jim Starlin, I think they went to the same high school or something. And then Jim Starlin would be at his locker and there'd be people around and stuff. And Al would be like, "Hey, man, I just got this new Fantastic Four." And he'd be like, zip it, you know what I mean? So no matter what's going on, no matter how mainstream and pop culture like we think and everything like that, um, comics, I've always had that stigma. And I tell you what, with some of the shit that's come out in the last 20 years and stuff, I have finally had moments to where I was like, I would be embarrassed to show this to somebody. So it's almost like it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've always remember hearing and seeing in interviews people saying the same thing and stuff, like people who do the comic books are like weirdos, but that was like during beatnik times and things like that, and that this stuff will rot your brain and that it's garbage and stuff, man. And then all of a sudden there's been stuff put out. I don't know, man. I mean, there's always been bad comics, and there's always been mediocre comics. There's always been great comics, and then comics that were just across the line exactly what they needed to be. A sequential, ongoing strip and stuff, right? That had good and bad arcs and things like that. But this is the first time that we've had absolute garbage coming out. Oh my god. Oh man. All right, we'll get with this one here. We got basically it's all Jim Shooter's fault. Just joking, but I remember when Jim Shooter was the big controversy in comics because in 2020 is the hindsight. Number one, I never worked for Jim Starlin, and I do know that I've heard people complain about their jobs. I didn't get it, and then I saw what they were working in. So you know, I'm not walking the fence on this one, right? But Jim Shooter walked into Marvel. He had worked at DC as a kid, been sort of molded and grafted and stuff, and that they were a more professional office, if you will. And then when he gets to Marvel, I'm trying to think who it was, Lynn Wein, Marv Wolfman, or somebody was sleeping under a desk, and he was like, "I'm home." You know what I mean? He was with people closer to his age and of that generation and stuff. And then when he became editor in chief, he ended up not letting writers be their own editors, which is why there was Roy Thomas and Marv Wolfman coming over to DC and stuff, and then working with people. And he got them to be shipping their books out on time. And he pretty much told the people, the creators and stuff, that this is not Burger King. We don't do comics your way, So he ran a tight ship, it sounded like, and my God, what came out of that tight ship? You know, X-Men boomed. I mean, it was Marvel. Marvel boomed, boomed in the 80s. Come on now. Oh, before that, it was things like license. I read somewhere where they were trying to claim that Marvel might have went under if they hadn't got the Star Wars license or something. So basically, that is it, guys. That is the feel of what's going on. We are now in reruns. The stuff that's been going on for long enough. It's history repeating itself. Cast of characters come in, new people coming in, more or less saying the same thing that's already been said. For some reason, people are willing to listen and stuff, right? And that's the interesting stuff for me. The motivation is the why. The narrative is growing, but it's still a narrative. It's not the facts, pure facts. Let's put it the way. Facts are in there. It's not the pure facts and stuff, right? And we're at a really unpredictable time. It's just that we have a few new things going on that kind of make there's some stakes involved, right? So that's it. That's kind of it, man. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to try to read some comics. I'm going to go to church this morning because where it's Christmas Eve. I'm going to spend some time with family. Enjoy this time off work, and I hope you guys do the same thing. Thank you for everybody that's on there. And again, like, subscribe, sub, hit that bell so you'll know you're here. All that stuff. And anybody that wants to, and when this uploads, the link for my Instagram, I'm Howler Mouse on Instagram. If you'd like to be on the show to talk about this, Palo, Gore, you guys know how to get a hold of me. Gray Man, I want to check and see if I got a message from you, if it went through. But anybody wants to get on here, just give me a message. Is there anything you want to talk about and explore here? We'll do it, man. I'm pretty humble. Merry Christmas, everyone, from Gore Vidal. I remember reading Wizard Comics when leaders in the business tried to convince to be original when they weren't. Yep. And Marvel in the 80s did have something that I thought was interesting. They had the illusion of character development, is how they were putting it. Enjoy. Thanks, Gray Man. Enjoy yours also. Eric Breen, Merry Christmas, kids. And with that, we're going to sign off. Be excellent to each other.